Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who is a huge animal rights advocate, has been a media personality, is the author of the book Love to Love You, Bradys, the bizarre story of the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, and is one of the stars of one of the most iconic series in television history, the Brady Bunch. Please help us welcome Susan Olsen. Susan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're very, very excited to have you on and have a lot to cover. But to begin with, you got started at a very early age. Your older siblings had gotten into the business. Was it something that your parents pushed you into, or did you have any interest at all because of what your siblings did?
Later, I had an interest in it, but my dad was dead set against it. Every one of
Really?
4 kids, and we each got discovered, beginning with my oldest brother, who was born in the 30s. My mom only had 4 kids, but she took a really long time doing it. And I mean, she was standing on a street corner with my brother, and a woman pulled her car over, got out of the car, handed mom her business card and said, "I'm an agent. This little boy should be in the movie. Is this little boy in the movies?" And she's like, "No." And well, he should be. Take him to Fox Studios tomorrow at 3:00, blah, blah, blah. They're looking for a little boy like this. And so mom goes home and tells dad, and dad says, "Absolutely no way." And mom said, "Oh, come on. There's no chance he's going to get it. And I'd love to see the inside of a movie studio." And he said, "Well, okay, go ahead." And he comes out with the script. He was doing a movie called Happy Land with Don Amici and Francis D. And it just, kind of went on from there. Lack of a babysitter, mom brought her next son to the set when my brother Larry was working. And a director came on the set and said, "Oh, that baby, he has a mouth like Gene Tierney. I want him to play Gene Tierney's son in this movie called The Iron Curtain." And so then mom goes home and she reasons with dad and says, "Well, we can't let one son do it, not let the other son." And so I think my mom was always happy about it. My grandmother insisted that it was a blessing that she'd put on the family. My dad thought of it as a curse. And I mean, my dad was always dead set against it. And then my sister came along, and at the age of 14 months, she was discovered for something. I was discovered for something at the age of 14 months. And then my sister wanted to get out of the business, so mom took me out too. So I was like 3. And then I was 5 years old, and I was at kindergarten, and a talent scout came to the kindergarten and picked me to sing a song on the Pat Boone Show. So it was like, my grandmother's blessing was just too strong. And mom said to me, I'll never forget, I'm 5 years old. She says, "Well, everybody else decided to get out of the business on their own, and you never were given it anymore." And she sure didn't want to do it anymore. And she said, "Would you like to, should I get you an agent?" I said, "Oh, yes, mommy, please, please. I want to be an actress. So get me an agent." And
Wow.
yeah.
we just had Pat Boone on, actually. So,
Oh, really?
yes. We should have asked about you.
I know that he remembers seeing me later and me talking about it, but I don't think he actually remembers the appearance. He should, though, because I screwed up the lyrics to the song, and I refused to start over. I was temperamental. I was like, no, no, no. It's like I had my chance, I blew it, and that's it for me.
Well, among your first credits were episodes of Ironside, Julia, and Gunsmoke,
Yeah.
which Ike was on. What's that like for a kid to be appearing on shows with stars that you may have watched on TV beforehand? Do you remember being nervous at all?
No, as a child, I really wasn't nervous. But like Julia had not shown it hadn't debuted yet on TV. It was a
Oh, okay.
brand new show, and Diane Carroll was super nice, just the sweetest thing. And I was there alone. There were two boys on the show, and they had gone home for the day. And I guess she thought I looked a little lonely, and she told me to come with her. And she took me into her dressing room, and she said, anytime that you want some time to yourself or anything, you're always welcome in here. And just give a little knock, make sure I'm decent. And my dressing room is your dressing room. And so she was so sweet. And I looked around and I saw all these posters advertising the show, and I saw that the two boys were in the posters. And so I came out and I asked my mom about that. And she said, oh, they're series regulars. They're on every episode. And I'm like, I was so jealous. I want to be a series regular. I want a series. And she goes, well, call your agent. And I did. And we were actually on vacation in Las Vegas when I got the audition for Brady Bunch. And Mom was like, well, we have to go back early. And I'm like, no. She said, well, you have an audition for a series. Oh, okay, let's go. And at the time, there was actually talk of adding, I'd done 2 episodes of Gunsmoke, and they were thinking about adding, it was a family, mother, a single mother and 2 children, and they were going to have Festus marry the mother. So
Oh,
he
wow.
would have these 2 kids. So I might have been a regular on Gunsmoke, and I was also up for Nanny and the Professor. And
Oh,
my grandmother, who, believed in magical thinking, um, she said, well, it looks like you prayed a little too hard. You have 3 things that might possibly be series for you. So it wouldn't hurt for you to tell God which one you'd prefer. And Nanny the Professor, that no, because there's just 2 boys to play with on that set. It was a toss-up though between Brady Bunch, because there's 5 other kids, and Gunsmoke, because there was horses.
Yeah.
And it was really hard, which as Eve Plum has said, I am amazed you must really love us because you chose us over horses. And it was a good choice.
Just really quickly though, you before Brady Bunch, you also had an appearance in the Elvis movie, The Trouble with Girls.
Yes.
Now, did you even know who he was at the time?
Oh,
And did you get
yes.
any? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very much so. But I wasn't a fan. I didn't like his music. I didn't like his sneer. And so I was no fan of Elvis. And I was auditioning for a big role in that movie. And the director, I guess they decided at the last minute that I might be just a little too young to memorize all the lines and the choreography, because I would have had to sing and dance with Elvis. And so the director still wanted me in the movie in some way. So they had me just sing a song on the like a little cameo appearance. But I must say that Elvis, when he came out of his dressing room, you heard all these women screaming. And I'm like, oh, well, it's Elvis. I better go see what all the commotion is. And I walked up to him, oh, well, I might as well get his autograph. And I walked up to him and I said, can I have your autograph? And he goes, sure, darling. And he looked at me, and that was my first taste of it, star power. And I was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. I get it. He was beautiful, just beautiful. He had this jet black hair and these blue eyes, and he was wearing this blue shirt and a white suit. And he was beautiful, and he just had this great aura about him. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. All right. He's a big deal. And then, of course, Barry Williams told me later on, it's like, I didn't know you were in an Elvis movie. That's so great. And I'm like, yeah. At the time, I wasn't that thrilled about it. He goes, do you know how much the Beatles love Elvis? I was like, oh, then it was really a
And it
big
was
deal because I
Yeah.
was raised by the Beatles. Yeah.
well, well, let's get back to the Brady Bunch like you started there. It's such an iconic show, and it's one that I was a fan of, and amazingly, my kids are now fans of it as well. And
Good. You're a good dad.
yeah, no, well, we interview a lot of people. I'll say this: when Chris came on, and now that you're on, it's the most excited my kids have been of anyone that we've interviewed. It's amazing
How
to me.
sweet. No, that's really good. I wish my son could have gotten into it because I teach kids and I teach kids acting, and I tell their parents, make them watch the Brady Bunch because there's so many easy to learn lessons in the show without, moralizing, and it'll make your job easier.
Well, what was the audition process for you?
I teach acting, and I teach a little filmmaking class for kids.
What was your audition process to get on the Bradys?
My audition. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Typical. What was odd about it is they never had us act. They in the Sherwood Schwartz, in his genius, he was so against what the networks wanted, which was you get a fat kid, skinny kid, smart kid, dumb kid, these stereotypes. And Sherwood said, no, I'm not writing any character descriptions. I'm going to find 6 kids that are interesting. And so he just interviewed us to see what we were like as people. And then there was a certain amount of trying to match us for vaguely looking alike. And there was actually, it was dependent on the parents. There was actually a set of 3 blonde boys and 3 brunette girls in case they hired a brunette mother and a blonde father. And I remember them trying to match us up, and at first Maureen was the middle child's age, like Marcia, and that was 5 years older than her. And then they thought, well, that makes the oldest one too old. So anyway, I remember that process and being, paired up, and Maureen being very excited, saying, we're staying here longer than anybody. I think we have it.
That was always a good sign for sure. Well, what did you think about the concept of the show?
Oh, I liked it. I had never really thought much about a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it became it was so pushed aside in later years. I remember they had Eve saying a line Jan saying to Peter, but I'm your sister, blood is thicker than water. And she's going to the producer saying, well, we're not blood related. Have you forgotten that? Oh, never mind. Just don't worry about it. Because it's like everybody had sort of forgotten that we were a blended family. But it was important because a lot of blended families really related to the show.
Have you been familiar with any of the more established actors like Florence or Robert or N.B. Davis?
Had I been
familiar with them beforehand? Their work?
Only Anne, and I was thrilled to bits that N.B. Davis was on the show because I had the Hong Kong flu when I was 5, and I was home from school, laying in bed all day, for days, and I watched the Bob Cummings show. and I loved Schultzy, which was the character that Ann B. Davis played. And I knew she was classic comedy, and I felt so thrilled and honored to be working with her.
Mm,
Great.
wow. Well, tell us a little bit more about Sherwood Schwartz and any other memories you have of working with him. What was he like?
Very nice. I used to say that he had a built-in smile because I'd never see him not smiling. He always had a smile for everyone. If you went to his office for any reason, he would come out from behind his desk and sit down on the couch with you so you'd be eye level. Um, he was very careful about making sure that everybody that was hired on our show were all family people. Oh, look, here we go. Here she is. Hello,
Oh, well,
Oh,
hello.
Miss Bellatrix. Um, I mean, that was really important to him, was keeping a family friendly set. And so almost everybody on our set were, parents. And he was just really, really nice. I mean, you couldn't ask for any better. Our first hiatus, I booked a Disney movie that I really, really, really wanted to do. I thought it was an answer to a prayer. Yeah, it sounded like we're really religious. Our prayers got answered. And so I had been praying to work with the child actor Mark Lester, who had been in Oliver,
Hmm.
and I had a crush on him. And so I got this part, and it was with him. And Paramount wouldn't let me do it
oh,
Mm.
because
why?
they thought it was wrong for one of the kids to be singled out and do something that the other kids weren't doing. And I'm like, everything was about it wasn't just a theme on the Brady Bunch. It was all about can't let those kids get swelled heads. And half of our plot lines were, one of the kids gets a swelled head. Anyway, so they couldn't have that. And I went to Sherwood to ask him if I could do the role. And I'm like, please, 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 I prayed for this. And my prayers were answered. And he goes, you really want to work during your vacation? And I said, yes, yes. And they said, well, of course, sweetheart. I'll let you do it. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll talk to Paramount. And that was that. So he was the kind of guy that could save you. He I always felt like he was on our side.
Oh, we have a lot more Brady questions, but before we came on, speaking of Disney, since you brought up Disney, right before we started, you said you had auditioned for Witch Mountain. So we want to
Yes.
hear. So we want to hear that.
Um, I think I think they were auditions that were after my agent had moved to a house and she had her office in her home. So we could go to her home for auditions. It was much more comfortable. But I went on several. I had several callbacks. So I came close to working with you, Ike.
Wow. I mean, that would have been extraordinary for sure. I know when I was researching my memoir about kind of the history of the film and the production. Dave Smith from the Disney Archives actually went and dug through the archives to see any notes or information he had about the production, and it had one half sheet of paper that I got that had the names of everyone who actually screen tested for it, but not everyone who auditioned for it. So I
Okay.
was
Yeah, I
definitely
didn't make it that far.
yeah, I was definitely not aware of how many other people did audition for it, and I keep meeting someone along the way who said, "Oh yeah, I screen tested for it, or I did that," and it's like, we were all cross connected there somehow,
Yeah.
no matter what, just because I don't know if you felt this way about your experience, but the child acting pool in the 70s was so small. I mean, it really
Yeah.
was relatively small. And especially those who worked a lot. So we were always seeing each other all the time, but I never saw you. I never saw you at an
Yeah.
audition. and it's just odd. It's odd to me.
I always thought, in fact, that's the reason why I said yes to this. Like, I would
Oh.
be because I'd never run into you. You were the it boy. You were on everything. I mean, you were just working solid. And I remember being, and I don't ask me who, with some director who said, "Oh, he's so lovely to work with.
Oh,
He's such a great actor. You have no idea how great he is. And he's so easy to direct. I wish all kids could be like him."
oh, wow.
And so I was like, "Oh, well, I'd love to meet him sometime." Man.
That's so nice to hear. But I said,
50 years.
Yeah.
I worked a lot, but I worked hard for it. And I was so jealous of you guys that you did, you got the audition, you got the part, and it's like 6 years of your life's taken
Oh,
care of.
yeah.
No more
Oh,
auditioning.
yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
always the goal for me. And I did a
Series regular.
one season of a series, and that was it. That was as far as I got. But yeah, no. Well, that's really cool.
And
Thank
nothing
you.
quite like having your mom pick you up at school and you're thinking of all the things you're going to do with your friends, and she says, "You have an audition."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was
Well,
always the exhausting part for me. I loved doing the work, but the
Yes.
auditioning, the constant auditioning was just like it really wore on me after a while. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway.
It does. It does. The work itself is great.
Yeah.
In fact, when I teach kids, and one of the things that I say to the parents is the constant auditioning. If they audition a lot, there's a lot of rejection, and that's not so fun. The work itself, I think every kid should do at least one job just to know what it's like. Just so they can know that they don't want to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder and a lot less fun than it appears. Um, but
For
the
sure.
audition is like,
For sure.
especially if you're neck and neck. And I mean, there was a job that I almost had. I did have it. I was told that I had it. And at the last minute, the star wanted another little girl. But it was the show Doctari. Do you remember that? It was
That's vaguely
about
familiar.
a veteran, all these exotic animals on the show. And I was born with Ellie Mae Clampett syndrome, and me. And when I didn't get that, it just crushed me. And it was, not too long after that I was doing Brady Bunch, and my mother said, "Do you see? If you um if you had been doing Doctari, you couldn't have even auditioned for Brady Bunch."
Yep.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll trust that there's a method to the madness. Okay.
No, well, speaking of Brady's, then the show is never. It's amazing to think of it. The show was never a huge ratings hit when it was initially on. I mean, was that something that you were even aware of at the time? Or were you just too young to think about those things?
Oh no, I learned all the time what our ratings were and that they weren't very good. So it was especially strange when we actually had a musical career, if you could call it music.
Yes.
And we went on concert tour, and there were towns where we showed up and it was like Beatlemania. We were mobbed. We had people, chasing us in cars. And I mean, we had no idea that we were that popular.
Wow.
And all I can think of is that, these were all people that didn't have Nielsen TV sets, because our ratings were not that good, but there were places. There was one time we did an appearance in San Jose, and they had to call out the architect of the shopping mall to see if the structure could withstand all the people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. And they ended up having to evacuate. So we actually were a little more popular probably than our ratings.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, once we got out there, and the people were real, it was really a shock to find out that we were that popular.
Wow. Well, I certainly, well, not certainly, but I personally had a very awkward time in school due to my notoriety. What was it like for you with friends or schoolmates during that time?
Well, my friends knew me and my friends defended me. Um, I would get teased mercilessly, mostly because Cindy wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. And I used to feel sort of grateful that the show was on Fridays and that the kids at school had a whole weekend to hopefully
Hmm.
forget a little bit all the dumb things Cindy did. But you know, they'd be ready to come at me on Monday. Um, and the one saving grace was I knew that they were teasing me because they were jealous. And it's like, well, you know, to be teased because kids are jealous of you, that's not so bad. I mean, getting teased because you have a club foot or, you know, you're ugly or stupid or whatever, um, that would be a lot worse. And but you know, it's still, it singles you out. It makes you feel very self-conscious.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't real wild about my character at the time because she did do a lot of things that were very cute. You know, it was the way a middle-aged man would write a very cute little girl. But I had to go to school and get teased for all the dumb things she did. Um, but yeah, like there was this one time that I saw a bunch of kids in the neighborhood and they're all playing on this big mound of dirt. And I'm like, I like dirt. I'll go play. Why can't I thought, no, 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 you can't go over there. Like, well, why not? I've been in this neighborhood longer than any of these kids. It's my dirt too. And so I rode my bike over there. Immediately they started throwing the dirt at me and going, Brady brat, go home. And, you know, because I
Oh,
didn't know
geez.
any of these kids. If I had known any of them, there would have been somebody there going, hey, stop, you know, she's cool. But I turned around, I'm on my bike and I'm riding back home. And I thought, well, I'd much rather be on a TV show than playing in a pile of dirt. And that really kind of turned it around for me.
Wow.
I don't blame them for being jealous. I'd be jealous too.
Hmm. Well, famously, Sherwood Schwartz and Robert Reed, had a lot of clashes about the show. So were you aware of any of that then, or were they mostly kept away from the kids?
It was really kept away, and I'd have to say Bob did a very good job of that. Because you know, usually Sherwood was in his office and Bob was on the set. And I was really, really sensitive. And if I had known that Bob was angry, I mean, I would have known. I would have been
Mhm.
very aware of it. And I wasn't aware of it. There were times, though, that we would go to Oblath's, which was the restaurant across the street from Paramount. And you, when you walked in, you were in the bar, and then you had to go through the bar to get to the restaurant. And Bob would be at the bar, and Mom would go, "No, no, 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 don't say hi to Bob. No, he's not in a good mood." And you know, he'd be getting a little tipsy because he
Mm.
just had a quarrel with Sherwood, and some of his arguments were for us kids. And Sherwood even admitted that there was a level of believability that the show had because of Bob, because Bob fought for things that he thought seemed silly, or
Mhm.
fought against things that he thought seemed silly. But I mean, there was stuff like him having a fit over the fact that strawberries create no odor when they're being cooked. So for me to walk into the kitchen and say it smells like I've gone to strawberry heaven, that would not happen. And that's how I learned suspension of disbelief. And I remember being a kid and thinking, because I heard that he was upset over that. And I thought, well, but who cares? So what? How many people know that strawberries don't smell when they're cooked?
I actually did not know that at all. So I'm so glad we had you on today because that
Doubtful.
little fun fact would have escaped my consciousness for the rest of my life. having never cooked
I think I'm
strawberries
going to
before.
cook some strawberries someday
Just test it.
and see if it's true.
Well, what was your relationship like with Robert Florence and Anne?
Well, Bob, oh, honey, um, Bob was a big animal lover too. Um, he, I remember thinking at the time, he's talking to me about cartoons with the same level of respect that he would speak to an adult about Shakespeare.
Mm.
He treated us like we were professionals. And his daughter had moved to Chicago. So Bob desperately wanted to be a dad. And there was a big hole in his heart because his daughter wasn't there. And I think we kind of filled that. And I used to say to his daughter, I feel sort of guilty because we got the love that he wanted to give to you. So he was very paternal. He took all of his kids to England because he had trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and he wanted to turn us on to British theater. Um, he gave us all home movie cameras when we were kids so that we could experience what it's like to be behind the camera. And Florence had her own family. So I saw her kind of more as a mom because I saw her being a mom to her own children. We used to go over to her house for sleepovers. Her kids and us, we were all really good friends. So we all grew up together. And then Anne was the kind of person where your parents would warn you, no, don't get in her hair. You know, she's not used to children. She's not real fond of them. So just, stay out of her way. And she got to the point where she loved us all. And she turned us all onto doing needlepoint. And she was very respectful. That's part of why I do the teaching now, is that I have so many wonderful adults in my childhood that I feel the need to pay it backwards.
Mm.
And I remember Anne, I asked some question. We were doing a scene together, and I asked some question. And I used a lot of technical lingo because I wanted to talk like a grown up, and everybody just burst into laughter. And I was like, I felt sort of foolish, and meanwhile they're going, oh, you've been going to night school, geez, what is she, 9 going on 30? And they didn't answer my question, which was whether or not we were going to shoot all the way through the scene or if we were going to cut and do a pickup. And it was Anne who said, honey, come here, this is what they're going to do. They're going to go up to this line. So she recognized the fact that I hadn't had my question answered, and she wanted to show me the respect that I was like kind of trying to get by talking like a grown up.
Oh, wow. Well, we've read that as the series went on, the kids were sometimes frustrated by the storylines. Did you find that to be the case? And did you feel that
Oh,
way?
yeah. I started
Oh,
praying for the show to be canceled.
oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
Wow.
I was getting uglier by the minute. I mean, going through your awkward age is bad enough. You don't want to do it on national TV. And they added cousin Oliver. I'm like, good, give him everything. Just have me in the background fixing a bike or something. And they didn't really know what to do with me. And it was clear that they didn't know what to do with me. And I felt very awkward. And that's when I started saying, okay, God, it's been a good run. Can we stop now? um, I didn't necessarily have any ideas. It's funny because we got this manager who filled some of our heads with lofty dreams, and he really kind of took over. Barry talks about it in his book. It's sort of a blur to me, having been a child. But we had this creative meeting with Sherwood where we all got to get up and tell him what we wanted to see our
But that was true. That's what
characters do.
we read about that. So you went in and made
Yeah.
demands from Sherwood?
Huh?
So you
Yeah.
all went in and made demands?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
And I remember I remember some of our demands. I remember that Barry wanted a scene where Bob hits him, where Mike Brady would hit Greg, just punch him. He wanted something that dramatic. I think that would have been horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
talk about
unmanageable.
not losing your cool and staying calm, cool, and collected. Mike Lookinland, Bobby Brady, thought that Bobby should have a girlfriend. And I guess for similar, and I felt that it would be very, very beneficial to the character and to the show if Cindy had her own horse.
Apparently, you were the smartest one of the bunch.
I will. Cindy ends up riding in the Olympics and all kinds of stuff. Because I knew that would be the only way I'd get my mom to let me ride. She was afraid of horses. And it was like all I wanted to do. I was one of those horrible little girls that screamed like she was seeing a rock star whenever she saw a horse.
Well, how did Sherwood take all this when you went into him?
He looked, as I recall, he looked like we had each lined up and kicked him in the stomach one by one. He looked hurt. And I came out of that meeting, I said to my mother, I don't know if he's our friend or our enemy. I'm so confused. And we were suing him. And my mother pulled me out of the lawsuit. She said, this isn't worth it. You're not having fun. She told my dad she's not having fun like she used to. I'm going to pull her out of this lawsuit. It's not healthy. And so I was the first one to stop suing him. I think only 3 ended up going through with the lawsuit. But I mean, I think we did have grounds for it, but you know what? When a child is working, it's hopefully the mortgage doesn't depend on the child, and it's about whether or not it's fun for the child. And it's not like everything has to be fun. You know, you have a commitment, and if it's not fun, too bad. People are counting on you. But mom thought that had just gone a little too far. And my dad, in the meantime, was going, good, take her out. Because he thought everything had gone too far because I had fame. And none of his kids had to go through that. And we had people coming up to the house, looking in the windows, and way too far. But I had to constantly kind of fight my dad to let me stay in it. So that meant anything that I didn't like about working, I really had to keep to myself.
And, you know, we read also that
there were times because Dad said he'd get me a horse if I'd stop the show.
Ooh.
We're seeing a horse is, you know, my economy. And I was thinking, well, yeah, right. You know, we can't afford a horse if I'm not on a TV show. But there were so many times I'd be at school getting teased, and I'd think, when I get home, I'm going to tell my dad, okay, I want out. Get me that horse. And by the time I get home, I think, no, I don't want to quit the show.
Well, we've also read that several of the cast said that the Hawaii episodes were their favorite. Was that yours as well?
Yes, because they were so much fun to do. That and the Grand Canyon, although no offense to Cincinnati. It was fun to travel to Cincinnati, but there had been plans for us to go to India.
Oh,
and
wow,
so settling for Cincinnati when I thought I was going to India was kind of disappointing. And I have the script because some of the producer, Sherwood's son, Lloyd, says there was never any plan to send the Bradys to India. And somebody had talked to my mother about it, and I was aware of it because Mom told me everything. And my teacher was from Calcutta. So I told her, and she said, "Oh, well, when you know where you're going, I'm going to make a list of places for you to visit." And of course, being raised by the Beatles went to India, so I have to go to India too. I have to be enlightened.
Oh God.
So I actually do have a copy of the script, but it was never done. It was a
Well,
three-part.
the but back to the Hawaii episodes. What were some of the things you got to do while you were there? Did you have some time to visit? Because that was an amazing time to be able to be there.
Yeah. Like when we went to Hanima Bay to do the snorkeling scene, it was, like a 15-second scene, but we spent the day there. So we were snorkeling.
Mm.
Um, uh, we had a lot of fun. And of course, we had fun because we were all together.
Oh.
And we were all very, very good friends. So we were all there with our favorite people.
Oh,
Poor Mike Lookinland got so sunburned his
oh
first.
no. Oh no.
Yeah, and then they had him climbing this rope ladder on a ship the next day, and he was scraping his skin going out.
Oh,
I felt so bad for him.
Oh, good grief. My gosh. Well, you mentioned Cincinnati, and that's where you guys shot at Kings Island Park.
Mhm.
Now, the story famously goes that they wanted to send you up on the roller coaster without testing the camera rigging first, and only didn't because Robert Reed objected. Is that true? And how nervous was everyone afterwards when
Well,
the camera came loose?
Bob and I refused to go on the roller coaster, period.
Mm.
He had a fear of heights. I did too. And Mike Lookinland was trying so hard to get me to do it, and he'd get me on these smaller roller coasters in the park, and I didn't like roller coasters until I was in my 30s, and I became kind of an aficionado. But so I did not want to go on the coaster. Bob didn't either, and Bob also said, "You better do a test run
Hmm.
with the camera." And who knows? I mean, several people would have died if they hadn't
yeah.
done that test run because the camera came loose and would have, hit people right in the heads. It's very possible. I mean, those cameras were so heavy, and with
Oh,
those
absolutely.
T-poses, it definitely would have killed somebody. But not me, because I wasn't going to be.
You weren't going on.
See, I'm the smartest one.
You did mention Robbie Rist already. So when he was introduced as Cousin Oliver, not that anyone was annoyed at Robbie, but was there anyone an annoyance, I guess, among the rest of the cast that the network was bringing in another kid?
Yeah, I guess so. I know that I think Barry Williams thought it was a terrible idea. I think we were becoming I don't know, it was before Fonzie jumped the shark. But there was, okay, partridges have Ricky Siegel, there's this sort of why add another kid? But I was glad because it meant maybe they wouldn't have me doing the cute stuff, which I wasn't cute anymore. It was awkward. So I was hoping that he'd take some of the attention away from me. And I liked the little guy. He had a fondness for this horrible Japanese science fiction movies, which I'd seen all of them. And we stayed friends. I turned him on to music.
Oh,
He
wow.
claims I'm part of the reason why he's a musician today. I turned him on to Queen. And we got our first electric guitars on the same day on Christmas. And then he came over to my house and yeah. And he's been in like an average of 7 bands ever since.
Well,
Wrote all the music for Sharknado.
Did he really?
Yes, all of it. I mean, not just the hit song.
I did not know that. I mean, I knew he was a prolific musician, but I didn't. I didn't know that was one of his credits. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, when the series didn't get renewed for the sixth season, were you disappointed or were you ready for it to end?
Oh, I
Finally?
was thrilled.
Yeah.
I didn't want to show it too much because I know my mom was sad. Um, but yeah, my first thought, and I know it was Mike Lookinland's first thought was, oh, good, a real summer. Because they'd always shot during the summertime because we didn't have school and they could use us a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, I get to have an actual summer.
Mm.
And I was happy. I was very happy about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at even if you're happy to be working, things can go on too long for you, or you can just be ready. That makes total
Yeah,
sense to me.
and like
Yeah.
I say, I mean, I was going through this really awkward age, and I'm like, good, and I figured I probably wouldn't work very much until I was 18 because that's just how it was. The child labor laws
Yeah.
were such that if they could hire an 18-year-old, they would.
Right.
And they often did. And the 18-year-old looked 32 and they're playing a 9-year-old. So I knew I wouldn't work very much until, I was an adult. And I ended up in an acting class. I had never taken a class. We were told not to. And in high school, I was always an artist, and that's kind of what I was pursuing. And somebody put me in an acting class. I went to my counselor. I'm like, what? Why would you put me in acting? I'm like, oh my God, you'd be really good at it. And I'm like, these are the people at school that hate me.
Yeah.
These are the kids that are the most jealous of me. Don't put me in a class with them. I'm like, well, it's too late. You're kind of in it. So I did it. I made some friends and it was okay. And I'd never been to a class before. And now, with kids, gosh, they'll say that the child has to, they'll decide the scene for the child, and the child has to work with a coach before even going on the audition. Which, I mean, we never saw a coach. So don't take any acting classes. It'll spoil how natural you are.
Totally makes sense.
Well, I don't like it because to me, you don't tell a kid how to do something. That's for the director. And if you teach a kid to do it one way and they go on the set and the director wants it a different way, they're going to get very confused. I suffered through that confusion. For the beginning of the fourth season, we had a new producer who kept coaching me, kept telling me how to do my lines. And I was thoroughly confused. So,
Wow.
And then my favorite acting teacher when I was an adult, he always said, we'd be taking a break, everybody's out smoking, and he's like, don't talk about the work. Do not tamper with each other. Talk about your pets. Don't talk about your auditions. Do not talk about the work. I don't want you tampering with each other. You talk about anything else. And it was a really good class. Ray Liotta was in my class. There were a lot of really good actors in that class that ended up making it. And they deserve to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we want to talk about the Brady Kids cartoon. Now, how did that wind up happening? And is it true that Florence and Ann were annoyed that they weren't asked to be in that?
I never heard that Florence and Ann were annoyed. Never heard that. Because I think it was, it's a cartoon. It's going to be just the kids. It was kind of focusing around our music, which was just the kids. And everybody, well, the Jackson 5 had a cartoon the same year, Filmation, same company. And but it became such a weird gig because they would catch one of us, like it would be my lunch hour, and I'd go into an office at Paramount and I would just say my lines with absolutely no context of the script, of the story. Just say the lines. And if I was really off, then the director would go, well, no, you're actually disappointed when you say that. Oh, okay. And just like in a half hour, do a whole season, and that's it.
Oh my
So it was
gosh.
really easy work.
Well, when the older kids were replaced, you had no idea about that?
No, that was part of the whole lawsuit thing. That
With
was
the
part of
cartoon was?
getting this manager that had us go into
okay.
Sherwood and say, you know, what we wanted our characters to do. And he strong-armed Filmation, I guess. And they said, well, to heck with you, and recast 3 of us kids. And I think they were the 3 that remained in the lawsuit, remained with this manager. But I think they deliberately got somebody who had a very unattractive voice for Maureen. Kind of, it seemed a little bit punitive. That they had somebody who was talking like this. Didn't seem like a good choice. Didn't sound a thing like her, and I think it was kind of meant to be an insult. Well, that wasn't nice.
Well, let's move on to the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. Dower, and your book, Love to Love You, Bradys. How did this series come about, and were you familiar with the Kroffts beforehand?
I hate to say it. I was familiar. Puff and Stuff filmed next door to us, and a big treat for me was to get to go to that set. And it was a closed set because they had a lot of little people in costumes, and they would get so hot. It was, you know, really grueling conditions. So they had a very limited number of visitors. And Marty Krofft would let me sit in his chair and watch them film. And visually, I, you know, loved Puff and Stuff. When it actually came on TV, I hated it. And I hated all Sid and Marty Krofft shows. I mean, like with passion, because they were so over the top. They were so corny. And, you know, the laugh track was overbearing. I was a critic back then. I mean, if Harry Potter had existed then, you know, with all its subtlety and its darkness, that's exactly what I would have loved. But, you know, their shows were just too goofy. And I used to watch the Donnie and Marie show. Well, probably shouldn't say this. I used to watch it so that then I could get high and listen to Led Zeppelin. It would sound all the better because I've been listening to this horrible music. So, but, you know, there's a difference between what you like and the work. And so we did a guest appearance on Donnie and Marie, and I was thrilled. I enjoyed it thoroughly. We were on with Ruth Buzzy and Chad Everett, and Sid came over. No, Marty came over to me. He goes, "Are you enjoying yourself?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, good, because, you know, you might be doing some more of this." And yeah, I was watching Marie with all of her costume changes, and it just seemed like so much fun. So when we got the show, I really enjoyed doing it. I hated the show, and I used to make my friends promise that they wouldn't watch it. Of course, they all watched it. They didn't keep their promises. And I'm not alone, because it was voted the 4th worst show in television history by TV Guide. So when it got that credit, my friend was writing a book about the Variety Hour, just because a lot of people really weren't sure if it ever happened or if they had a bad hit of acid where they dreamed that
I used to watch the show.
Brady show.
So.
Well, everybody was kind of like, oh boy, the family's
Very
back
nice.
together. And so they kind of would take whatever we gave them. And I don't think we did that badly. I think you take a bunch of actors and you make them sing and dance. We did pretty good. But anyway, so I'm one of three authors. My friend was going to write a book about the Variety Hour. Once it got that esteemed title of fourth worst show in television history, and then I was all proud of it too. So he wanted me to write a foreword, and then it became, well, why don't you write the sidebars? And I told him, you really should make it a coffee table book, because it's such a visual monstrosity that, I mean, glitter is just so over the top. It should really be a visual book. And I goes, okay, well, do you know somebody? I knew a fabulous art director, Lisa Sutton. So Lisa and Ted and I wrote the Love to Love You Brady's. And we spent a whole day watching every episode of the Variety Hour while doing Jello shots. And it became a holiday for us. It was official Jello shot day.
When you were told the concept of it, like the Brady's now have like this stage in their yard or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, they've moved to Malibu. They had a beach
Nice.
house. Yeah, it was, I don't know. Yeah, I was just, Bruce Valanche was one of the writers, and I instantly loved him. That it was neat to be around these funny people, and there were costumes. Although I must say, when I first saw the stage for the pool, I cried because I thought it was I thought it was so ugly. It was covered in glitter. It's like it was just so tacky looking to me. God, I'm such a critic. I was so tough, but I enjoyed it. We had fun. We really had fun. I put together, when we were doing the book, I put together. It was the first thing I ever edited, and I wanted to show every guest that we ever had on the show, to give anybody who was looking at, because we were thinking about doing a mockumentary along with it. And anybody who didn't know that the show existed, didn't know, they thought maybe there was one special. They didn't know that we'd had, now I've forgotten, maybe 9 or 10 episodes, and we had all these guest stars. And so I wanted to put a little bit of every guest star. And so I edited this thing to the song Razzle Dazzle. And I mean, looking back, it's like, it was so funky. It was so weird. What a great experience to have under my belt. And we had Tina Turner on our show.
Yes.
Yeah, she was lovely. We had Charo. Charo was so much fun. I just adored her. And I didn't know that she had been classically trained by Andre Segovia, and she played Malagueña. And I ditched school so I could go watch her filming her.
You had great guests on there.
Yeah, and they were really nice. Vincent Price, oh my goodness. Nobody ever learned our names and he was on our original show, on the Hawaii episode. And nobody bothered learning our names. And he shows up on the Variety Hour and he's like, hello, Susan. And he was aware that I did art. And so we talked about art and cooking. And he was just such a lovely man. I could not believe that he knew my name.
Awesome.
But when Eve didn't come back, did that bother you at all, or make you worried that the series wouldn't be the same?
Yeah, it bothered me a lot because she had something better to do, because she's doing the sequel to Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway. And I actually said one time, everybody was talking about her kind of disparagingly during a rehearsal. I said, well, don't we all wish we had a better job to do than this? Crickets chirped, and
Wow.
Florence gave me a look that I'm shocked that I was not turned into a pillar of salt right then and there. But it's like, but she's on, she's having her real acting career. Good, because she was a very serious actress, even as a little girl. And so I was very happy for her, but she and Mike Lookinland were the two that I was closest to. So it was really a drag to not have her around.
How'd the rest of the cast take to Jerry Russell?
Oh, I mean, all we could think of was how difficult it must be for Jerry. And all we could focus on was let's make it easy on her. Let's make her feel welcome. And I think Bob really bent over backwards to because she recalls it kind of made her cry because he was so kind to her and really wanted her to know that she was welcome and that she was family.
Mm. Well, was it surprising to you to see Robert back again after the way things ended on the original series?
No.
Hmm.
Isn't that odd?
Hmm.
I mean, here he was so unhappy doing the original show, and now here he is on this variety hour, and he's like a pig in the mud. He's enjoying it. He's loving it. He's having so much fun, even though I don't think he felt very comfortable with the music, with the singing and dancing. But I remember the last episode, we had this sketch where he played a, shall we say, mentally compromised version of Christopher Columbus. And I'm watching him, and it's just broad comedy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he is having so much fun, and he's so good at this. They need to have him do more of this really broad comedy, and not have him sing and dance so much. Have him do this. He's so good at it. And it really is good. I've shown it to my students who, the ones that are familiar with Brady Bunch. I'll show them this Christopher Columbus sketch, and they're like, that's the dad on Brady Bunch? Oh my gosh, because he's playing this moron and he's adorable. It's really cute.
Well,
So it would have been a lot better, I think, if it had continued. I think they would have picked more on strengths rather than weaknesses.
Well, after the show, when did you first, like we said before, the Brady's was never a huge ratings hit. So, but when did you start becoming aware that it became more popular later on than it was during its initial run? When would you start noticing it?
More people were recognizing me, but it was a different kind of recognition because I looked different. Which is always better because then it's like, I grew up with you. It makes you a person. Whereas if you're on TV looking the way you do, you're an object, and it's kind of objectifying. But so more and more people were coming up to me and recognizing me. So I knew it was more popular. And I guess we were all told, well, it's more popular now in syndication than it's ever been. And I used to come home from school and my mom would be watching it. And since I didn't really like watching it during the first run because I didn't like seeing myself, I used to watch Sanford and Son with my dad in the bedroom. Mom would say, "You're not watching your own show?" I'm like, Sanford and Son's really good. So it was my first time watching the show, and it was like watching home movies, kind of. I'd come home from school, Mom would be watching, and as a result, I am the only cast member who's watched the show.
Really?
So I kick butt in Brady trivia, and they we don't know anything. Ask Susan, because we'll go on some shows together, and they'll have Brady trivia challenge, and no, we don't. There was just a job. We did it. We didn't watch it. Ask Susan.
Well, were you surprised when people wanted to bring it back for subsequent sequels like the Brady Brides and the Bradys? And what were your feelings about those series?
Well, I thought they were terrible, but It was always fun to see the cast
Mhm.
again.
Yeah.
You know, the R word is never very good. Reunions, reboots,
Mhm.
rehashes. I didn't like any of the productions that we did, but getting back together, you know, I was raised on magical thinking, and to me, it was like we were so close. We had such a unique experience together because, yeah, we did the show, we did the cartoon, we did the concert tour was really where we all got very close because we were traveling together. And it just seemed to me like we would always be together. We would always come back and do something. It seemed normal and natural for there to be reunions. It's like we're never going to say goodbye to each other.
Mm.
I
What were you so what were your thoughts on the Brady Bunch movie? I know you filmed the part where it was cut
Yeah.
out, but you know, it was so much fun. What were your thoughts on the
Well, I played a postal worker who's the town gossip, and I'm telling Cindy not to gossip. Yeah, I'm trying to lecture her, but I'm a big gossip. Um, I had been told that the script was horrible and it was insulting and terrible. Florence had said this, Anne had said this. And so I was expecting something really bad. Well, little did I know they'd changed everything. And when I got the script, I went, well, kick me hard. I think this is brilliant. I think this is the funniest thing. I love it. I'm just so glad it's being made. And I was, you know, thrilled to be a part of it. But I was also really glad when Betty Thomas called me and said that they were having to cut my scene out. And she was hoping to have the time to shoot another cameo. Both me and Mike looking at our scenes kind of hinged a little bit on this subplot involving the neighbors.
Mhm.
And they removed the subplot. And I'm so glad they did because it wasn't very good. And I could enjoy the movie because I wasn't in it. So I went to two premieres of it back to back in New York. First, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not. I have to see the movie tonight, and then I have to see it again tomorrow night. Oh dear. Well, I watched it that night and couldn't wait to see it the next night. And I brought
so
my
funny?
best friend from high school, and they'd filmed all the school scenes at our high
Mm.
school, and oh, we were loving it. We just, I was like, this turned out so great. It made me really proud.
Well, we definitely want to talk to you about a very Brady renovation, which I absolutely loved watching. I thought that was so fascinating and so much fun. So this comes out a few years ago, and all the Brady kids went to the original house, the one used for the exterior, and renovated it to make the interior look like the original sets. Now, how much fun was that to be involved with, and how surreal was it to be standing in it when it was completed?
Oh, well, I felt a little bit of vindication for a 9-year-old me who was always asking difficult questions. And I said to the producers, why did you pick that house for the exteriors? It's obviously not a two-story house. Why did you pick that one? Well, it actually, I think they were friends that owned it. But the producer said, I'll have you know that if you walk in that house, it looks exactly like this set. Well, that tied my brain in knots because as a little girl, I toyed with the idea of being an architect. I was like, how could it? If there is a second floor, it's on the wrong side. And how could it possibly? And finally, I said to my mother, how could that house possibly look like this set? She said, oh, honey, it doesn't. I'm sure it doesn't. They're just trying to shut you up. You know, you're asking a difficult question. And so it was great to see the interior of the house as it really was. It's
Mm.
nothing like the set. I didn't think it was possible. And I thought it was so beautiful of HGTV to just, they were going with a hunch, with a gut feeling. We have to have the house. And then it was, we have to have the house. We don't know what we're going to do with it, but we have to get the kids involved. We don't know what we're going to do, but we have to do this. And I thought that was really great to just have a feeling and get a green light on the feeling and go with it. It was like it was a path with heart, and everything fell into place and everything worked. I told them, oh, it's not possible. You're going to have to compromise the exterior look because you have to add a second floor. And I've tried. I've taken the blueprints for the second floor and put them on top of the first floor. It doesn't work. Well, they made some adjustments and they created a miracle. I mean, it's really a miracle. The fact that it looks the same on the exterior, and there's a few little differences, but not huge. And then to watch friends of mine come through the doors and turn into children. I mean, it just has this magical effect. I was thinking we should do a talk show from this place, because it would be kind of like getting the guests drunk. Because they walk in, they just become vulnerable and little children. And it was very, very magical and very strange for us to have a roof on
Sure.
this house, and the fourth wall is there. It's amazing. I wanted to spend the night in it. But nobody else did.
It'll let you. That's it. Well, Barry and Maureen have both released memoirs, and Barry and Chris now doing the Real Brady Bros podcast. So I'm assuming you've read the memoirs and perhaps listened to the podcast. How much
I've been
fun
on
is
the
it?
podcast.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, how's it been to hear stories that maybe you had no idea about and hearing it from their perspectives?
Frankly, most of those stories came from me.
Oh.
Oh,
I'm the one with the memory. And I sit down a long time with Barry. And I was glad to share my memories with him, because I was glad to see somebody write a book, because it was kind of like what I wanted to do when I produced Brady Bunch home movies. I wanted to show that we had been actors. We were doing a job. We were very professional. We did a lot of work. And we recorded albums, did other shows, and I don't know, kind of give some respect for the experience that we had, and the fact that we were all good kids. We all turned out okay. None of us went off the rails, and we all love each other. So I think that's a lot to be proud of.
Any plans for you to write your memoir?
Yeah, I've been kind of dabbling at it for the past decade or two. It's about timing, really. Somebody said, well, popcorn movies sell more than epic films. And I said, I don't want to turn my life into a popcorn movie. I don't want to do it wrong. It's really a humorous book. It's more like essays about my life, what I've written so far. And I think that's a formula I'm going to stick with.
But I'll say, writing the memoirs, mine was as much about me making sense of my career and my life at the same time, because you sit and you look at your IMDb page and you see all these credits, and of course I'm like you, I have an impeccable memory that goes way farther back than it should, and and I remember things that I actually had to correct Disney's production schedule archive notes because they were wrong, and I knew they were wrong because I was there,
Yes.
so it's that kind of stuff. But being able to kind of sort through the experiences, I had all these experiences, and then I'm thinking, they're just awash in my brain, and I talk to people about them sometimes, but then sitting down and putting it all in order and saying this led to that and that led to that and this, this affected that, and and yes, the people I got to work with, the number of people is extraordinary. I think that's the one of the things I enjoy most about my work on my book, was that I get to share these personal experiences about Betty Davis, for God's sakes. You know
Yes,
what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
you spend 6 weeks standing next to her, the stuff's going to happen.
Oh,
And she's probably the number one question I get asked about from anyone else. So I encourage you to do it. I would love to read a humorous essay style memoir from you. I think that would be absolutely delightful. Absolutely delightful.
oh, okay. Well, I used to have a blog, and much to my surprise, it's still out there.
Hmm.
I never paid a penny for the domain, but it's still out there. And I posted a thing from about almost drowning when I was 5. Um, I'll send you a link.
Oh,
Please do.
sure.
Well, getting to the show is still extremely popular. As I said at the beginning, it amazes me to see that years after it initially aired, my kids love it now. You won an award from TV Land, for it. What do you attribute to its enduring popularity and longevity?
Well, I think that Sherwood's idea to pick 6 kids that were interesting was good, because there weren't stereotypical character restraints. The fact that you had both genders, not 50 of them, 2 genders at the time, uh, represented, and 3 age groups. So every child in America, and eventually the world, had a child they could relate to. And you can start watching the show relating to Cindy and work your way up to where finally you're relating to the mom, because you've got your own kids and now they're watching the show. And they were very careful about not letting us dress too trendy. They didn't, although I mean, the show definitely has that 70s look, but they wanted there to be something kind of timeless about it. I think that there was an awareness that this could live on, and they prepared for that. And I think it's wonderful because kids can watch a show and relate to the times that, well, now it's the time that their grandparents were alive, what things were like. And it helps to bridge the generation gap. And like I said, there's some nice little lessons there. I wanted my son to watch the show, but he couldn't, because the first thing that came out of his mouth was, well, how come you always play a stupid child? And it's that Eve when she was little, there's Chris, and he couldn't quite relate to it as a show. So he had Fresh Prince. That was his Brady Bunch.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, aside from your memoir, what are you working on next?
I'm happy to just be teaching kids.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not an animal rights activist. I know it's splitting hairs, but I'm an animal welfare advocate, or so, rather than rights, because like I acknowledge that, well, I eat meat. A lot of my friends don't. I've worked with professional animals that enjoy performing. I just think animal rights tends to go a little too far sometimes. And I was a hands-on rescuer of kittens. I used to work for the shelters, bottle feeding kittens, which makes
Mm.
your brain go gooey. Now I'm on the board of directors for Spirit of Animals Sanctuary. So I'm friends with pigs and cows and horses and a zebra, and love opossums. I'm waiting. possum season's coming up. I'm as happy as Granny Clampett. Because I'm hoping to foster one, although the cats may not be too happy about that. But we'll foster parent bottle feed raccoons and opossums and rehabilitate them to go back out in the wild. And I had a pet squirrel when I was 9. I've always been very into animals. So
you'll send me a link, so we'll include it there. So if people want to get involved and help out, they can. Yeah. So love to include
the
that.
Spirit of Animals in Acton, California. There are several with the same name, but we're the ones in Acton.
Well, a couple of years ago, you got together with your TV brothers to do the movie, Blending Christmas. So are you open to doing more work with everyone?
Oh yeah, sure. That was fun. It was really interesting because we weren't playing our characters. And but we were still together, which, I mean, it's always going to be magical whenever we're together.
Well, Susan, we want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure for us, a treat to get to talk to you. And you're welcome back anytime. Anytime we'd love to have you.
Great, thank you. And Ike, it's so good to finally meet you.
What a treat this has been for me as well. So thank you so much.
Well, again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Susan Olsen. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.